downloaded the Buckeye Leafcast with your host, Andrew T. Evans, with special guest, Chris Stefanik.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for downloading this special edition of the Buckeye Leafcast with your hosts. I'm Andy Evans, and you know who is rocking the other side of the microphone with me, and we are going to have a big Buckeye Leafcast to talk about big things, Maryland recap, and you know who. Big game coming up here in just a couple of days. And my man with the plan, the intergalactic Buckeye fan himself, is going to be bringing it to you, Mr. Chris Stefanik.
Mr. Evans, it's Michigan week.
Yeah, baby. This is the week, Chris, all of us Buckeye fans, I mean, I am getting chills right now just thinking about this upcoming game in 2 days. But before we launch into that, we do need to do a brief Maryland recap, Chris. We have not talked about this game at all yet. Kind of briefly, just between you and I, through texting and Facebook messages and the like, but an opportunity for us to talk on the microphones about it. What in the world happened over there in College Park, Chris? Definitely did not go the way that I think anybody thought it would go. And to be quite honest with you, Chris, Ohio State had no business winning that football game, but they still did. They pulled it out of their asses, dude. Final score, Ohio State 52, Maryland 51 in overtime, and thanks to a botched 2-point attempt by the Terrapins, the Buckeyes hold on and remain with only one loss on the season. Chris, what in the hell happened? Seriously. You told me that you were not watching the game that day. You had to watch it tape delay. So as I'm like wanting to reach out to you throughout this game, and I'm like, I can't because I'm going to give it away. But just like the Purdue game, you weren't able to watch right there and then, and you went back and watched it later. Are you sitting here thinking, here we go, another Purdue type scenario? I can't believe this. Ohio State's going to lose this friggin' game to a very average Maryland team that needs one more damn win, and they still need one more damn win just to become bowl eligible. And here they are getting worked by a 500 football team.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. On the offensive side of the ball, have we ever looked this good? I mean, we finally had a game where both offensively we were able to run the ball and pass the ball and look good in both. I mean, Dobbins with 203 yards on the ground. Yeah. Another 400. I mean, just another 400-yard game from Haskins, and just a clutch performance from Haskins. I mean, if there's one thing that makes me feel good about going into this weekend versus Michigan, it's just that this team doesn't seem to be phased when they're down. I mean, they were down against TCU, they were down against Penn State, they were down by 14, I think 3 times versus Maryland. Yeah. And just were calm, poised, went out there and got it done. It's like they are clutch, they are calm, they have been in, bad situations and kept their heads. So, if they get into a game where they're down, that doesn't phase them. So that could help. The other side of the coin is, have we ever seen the defense look this bad?
Oh my God.
I mean, this is, I've never seen the linebackers this poor.
There were several records, Chris, set against Ohio State.
This whole season.
Yeah. I mean, just insane some of the things that this Maryland team was able to do offensively against Ohio State, and literally set some opponent single game all-time records against the Buckeyes. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's you could go. I mean, it felt like half the teams we played had record set, on offensive record set against this defense, right? It's just It's unbelievable. They gave up 535 total yards, including 339 on the ground. Much of them to that McFarland. Five plays of 50 yards or more. Are you freaking kidding me?
He came within 7 yards of setting the school record. Redshirt freshman.
Yeah. And I mean, this team, they only completed, what was it, 7 of 14 passes?
Yeah. Or
and
like
they
8
put
of
up
16 or something. Yeah,
like they gave it 51. Yeah. There's just no adjustments. I mean, honestly, most of those runs was the same play. It was, it reminded me of a play I used to run in I believe it was Madden football.
Madden. Yep, I knew you were going with that. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's this play you could pitch the ball outside, and you'd send the wide receiver in motion. So what I would do is I would send the wide receiver in motion, and if they were in man, it takes the cornerback would go with the wide receiver. So I'd be like, great, don't have to even worry about blocking that guy. I'm taking him completely the other side of the field, and then just you run that way, and it was like nobody even got to the guy for 5, 8, 10 yards, right? Depending on how fast your running back was. I almost felt like dirty using it because it was just so easy. I would only use it if I was really desperate, just because it was such a cheat. And I'm like, surely, in real football, nobody would really allow that, allow you to just totally get the edge. But no, in real football,
that's what Ohio State does. It's like a video game when you're playing against Ohio State's defense.
Yeah, they totally would shift with the motion, and then that side would just be wide open, and McFarland was getting total he would there was no contain, right? He would get past it and he was off the freaking races. They just kept running it over and over again, and we've complained about this defense not adjusting till halftime. It's like, no, guys, it's not against the rules to adjust in the first half. You don't have to wait to halftime to make adjustments. It's like, Jesus.
That's just what it seems like this whole year. Greg Schiano, and dude, we've talked about this. How many friggin' times now do we have to keep talking about this when it comes to Ohio State's defense? Make friggin' adjustments. He doesn't care. Greg Schiano just does not care. He does not give a shit right now about Ohio State and this defense. He's simply going through the motions. He's put it in cruise control, and he could give a flying flip less right now about what his defense does.
Yeah,
that's the impression that I get. Seriously, that's just the impression I get. I'm sorry. I could be totally off base, and maybe Greg Schiano's like, I love Ohio State, and I love you, Urban, and let's all make love here in the middle of the football field, the 50-yard line. Let's all dance and celebrate and sing Kumbaya. I love Columbus, Ohio. I love being here, and maybe that's just the thing, is he's just not a very good defensive coordinator. Or he is, which I think he is. He's a lot better than what we've seen, and he's just going through the motions, and he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really likes to lose and likes to look bad. And I mean, he's looking really bad. I mean, really bad. This is pathetic. This is pathetic. Everybody is calling out how bad the Ohio State's defense looks, and everybody is calling out Schiano specifically. So I can't imagine.
Despite the fact that they keep winning, teams are hopping over them in the college football play. I mean, because of their defense now, that is what is holding them back from being 5th or 6th ranked. I mean, they got one damn loss, Chris. One loss. And I realize that the teams ahead of them are either undefeated and have one loss. Well, except for LSU, still for some reason a 2-loss team that's not going to play for a conference championship is ahead of a team with only one loss that does have at least the potential still to play for a conference championship. It's because of the defense.
Yeah, well, it actually came out this week that the committee, because they're like, why are they hating on Ohio State so much? When they like Oklahoma, it's like, yeah, their defense sucks, but Oklahoma's given up big points too.
Exactly.
It actually came out that
they don't like Gene Smith being on the committee.
No, it's what they're saying is
I'm just kidding.
That, yes, they're giving up a lot of points, like Oklahoma's giving up a lot of points, but it's a lot harder to play defense in the Big 12 than it is the Big 10. At least that's the perception.
What?
In the committee. Now hear me out. And so what they're thinking is Ohio State, if Ohio State was in the Big 12, they would live even worse defensively, because, they're giving up 51 to Maryland. Well, meanwhile, Maryland's only scoring 3 points and 14 points respectively against Michigan State and Temple. I mean, they got 14 points versus Temple, and they get 51 versus Ohio State.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, you're like, yeah, well, that's kind of hard to argue that point. I mean, they might be right. I mean,
I guess. Yeah. No, I see it.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. You don't really know unless you pick up Ohio State and insert them into the Big 12 if their defense would be even worse. But it's pretty hard to make the argument, based on what you're seeing from Ohio. Ohio State just keeps letting these average teams light them up. So that's and to be fair, I mean, this team is not playing CFP level football right now, right? I mean,
I know. I just it pains me to see that Ohio State is 10-1 and they're not getting as much respect as I think they deserve. But then again, maybe they are getting exactly the kind of respect they deserve. Because let's face it, if this team does somehow back their way into the college football playoff, probably whoever they play at this point, it might, especially in Alabama or Clemson, lay a smackdown on them. Notre Dame, I don't know. I don't know if Notre Dame can lay the smackdown on Ohio State, but after what they did to Syracuse this past weekend, I don't know. Maybe they could, but you're right. Let's face it, Ohio State's really not playing CFP level, football.
Right. I mean, at this point, Ohio State needs to, against upper echelon teams like they're going to play this weekend, they basically need to get in a shootout because that's the only thing their defense is so bad that, I mean, even like mediocre offensive teams are breaking records versus them. So they just have to get in a shootout and they've got the offense to do it actually. So, I mean, they've got a shot. I mean, honestly, I think they've got a shot versus anyone. This is the thing but the only reason why I am kind of a little pissed about the CFP rankings and would like to see them higher is I know if they got in there, there's a chance. Would it be small? Sure, but it's not like impossible. Like let's just say they're playing Alabama in round 1. I mean, there's a chance that they could come in and maybe take Alabama having like a 5 turnover kind of day thing. But I mean, it's like it seems like every college football team. I've said this before, but like every college football team has a game every year where they have like 4 or 5 turnovers. Just inexplicably, the ball just bounces the wrong way, right? It's tipped up and somebody gets a pick. They mess up a snap or whatever, And if you have one of those versus a good team, you're probably going to lose. Like even if you're Alabama playing Ohio State, if Alabama has 5 turnovers, they're probably going to lose to Ohio State. Where meanwhile, Ohio State's had some stinker games like that, but versus Maryland this week, but they're talented enough that they're able to still pull out the win. Like you said, they had really no business winning that with all the times they put the rock on the carpet, So, there's a chance if they get in there, but if they don't get in, there's no chance. So that's the only, but otherwise I'm like, they're just really not playing that level of football. But it sucks. And it's Schiano. I think a lot of it is Schiano. I mean, maybe the talent on defense isn't as good as it's been in years past. I mean, they had so many defensive backs drafted in the first round. I mean, Sheffield, Arnett, Okuda, these guys are not first level draft picks playing on that corner.
Nope.
For sure. And, we had a gigantic black hole of a weakness in our safety spot next to Jordan Fuller until they found Brendan White. So, there's definitely a talent drop off. We don't have a Bosa on the defensive line. We've had how many years with the Bosa on the defensive line?
We did, but we lost that.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had it since week 3. So
yeah,
he went out in the first half of week 3. So
yeah, the first half of the third game.
Yeah. So there's a talent drop off, and the linebackers aren't as good.
Oh no!
But I think it's the combination of scheme and that. And Schiano is he's getting out schemed every game. Every freaking game he's getting out schemed.
And we're hearing, he doesn't have a damn scheme at all. He doesn't even have a scheme himself.
Yeah, well, he has a scheme, but he doesn't adjust it. He just runs it. And he's like, well, here's 2 things with the problem with what Schiano does. So he has this scheme where he's super aggressive, blitzes the guys, blitzes a lot, has the linebackers up mugging, up at the line of scrimmage playing like defensive tackles, has the cornerbacks right up on top of the wide receivers. So there's two problems with it. Three problems really. One is it doesn't really fit our personnel. In the past, we had the personnel for that. In the past, we had these lockdown cornerbacks that you could put them on an island and be okay. These guys aren't locked down. So it's a lot, it doesn't really fit our personnel is the one problem. Second problem is, even if that's like your base scheme, you still want to change it up here and there. I made the analogy earlier this year where it's like playing rock, scissors, papers with somebody and you every single time throw rock and you wonder why they just own you. You're like, my God, I just can't beat this paper. Why did And it's like, well, dude, maybe you should throw some scissors up in there. Just you got to change it up occasionally. It doesn't have to be like 50-50, but I mean, you have to keep them honest. And so that's the second problem. And the third is just there's no adjustments at all. It's like, or at least not until the half. So you've got to, if you see they're motioning your players away from one side of the field and then running to that weak side of the field, you got to make an adjustment. If you have to, call a freaking timeout and whiteboard on the sideline there and say, okay, here we're going to have you stay over here. Or, that's the perfect time to call zone. Be like, all right, well, maybe we should make sense some zone. But yeah, it's so Schiano is failing miserably. And like it came out this week. Yeah, because we've been sitting here saying, man, Grinch was so good at his previous stops, turning defenses around from like Swiss cheese to being good. He comes over, and I think he's like co-defensive coordinator, right? At least in name. And defense is just sucking. Well, it came out this week that both Grinch and Tipper Johnson have been, going to Schiano and being like, look, we need to adjust our defense to fit to the strength of our players. Look, we need to have some diversity. We need to not throw rock every single freaking time. And Schiano's just shooting him down. He's not hearing it. He's arrogant. He's stubborn, and he's just going to go down with the ship. He just doesn't give a shit, I guess, as far as that goes, as far as what other people say. It's not that he doesn't give a shit about how the defense plays. He doesn't give a shit what other people say. He believes he's right, and this is what's worked for him in the past, and he's just going to keep doing it. But, it's like the old Einstein quote, like insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So he's just, it's not working.
So, what do they do then from here? I mean, does this team not seem kind of like it's in a little bit of turmoil? I mean, you just mentioned, this whole thing with Greg Schiano, and then there's the whole Urban thing and the cyst in his head. And, people are all saying, oh, he's gone. I guarantee he's going to leave at the end of this year. And, everybody's now starting to speculate about that. And, who would our next head coach be and all this kind of stuff. And it just seems like this Ohio State team, they're just kind of treading water, to be at the point at where they're at. They're not lazing on the raft right now like it seems like Michigan is. I mean, they're just straight chilling, just ready to just come in here and thump the shit out of Ohio State. And Ohio State's kind of, treading water here. And I don't know. I personally would love to see Greg Schiano gone after this year.
Oh my God!
You know that he's not going to go anywhere. Well, he's not going to go anywhere, or they're not going to ship him off unless he's going somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Like Urban, unless
I still think the guy's a good head coach. I just don't think he's a good defensive coordinator. So I could see him being told, "You need to take a job." I don't care, or
Urban would do that,
or you're gone.
Do you think Urban would do that, though? Because aren't he and Schiano buddies? I mean, hell, the whole freaking coaching staff, it seems like, is just full of Urban's friends. Like,
right.
Not just friends through football, but like friends, Well,
Best I mean,
he's at his wedding and brother-in-laws and cousins and aunts and uncles. And
at least at Ohio State, I don't know what his track record's like at other schools, but at least at Ohio State, the only coach he's fired has been Zach Smith. He's behind closed doors, been like, look, you really need to accept the position somewhere else. He's done that. Like, remember Withers after 2013 when Ohio State's defense was an embarrassment. Withers was told, look, you need to accept the position somewhere else. So he went and took, I forget where he went, but I mean, it was like Division III or something like that. He went somewhere.
Didn't he coach like his son's Pee Wee team or something that year?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, wow, that's a big step from Ohio State to there, like Grambling or something.
I'm gonna look it up right now. Where Everett Withers.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? He just got fired from Texas State.
But it wasn't Texas State.
Well, I'm just
right.
Not gonna work here anymore. Okay, hold on. Here we go. After Ohio State, it doesn't say what position he was.
He was head coach.
Assuming he took a head coaching. Okay, yeah, coaching career, unless noted. He took the head coaching job at James Madison.
James Madison. Yeah, so quite a bit of a drop going from. I mean, granted, he was a head coach. He went from being defensive coordinator to head coach, but typically I think it's definitely more high profile, probably higher paying, probably in a better position to get a big job, to get a big gig being a defensive coordinator at an elite program like Ohio State than a head coach at James Madison. But so anyways, I see Schiano being asked to take, because I mean, if you're going to ask Withers to go, how do you not ask Schiano when this is like clearly worse than Schiano? And also, I mean, Urban, he was going with still Trestle's players in 2013. He's now got all his own players in there, and in theory, like a higher talent level, and he's still not getting it done. He's playing worse. I just can't see how you let Schiano come back. So, but your question was, what does Ohio State do from here? So in the offseason, if I'm Urban and I'm healthy enough to come back, then I definitely, Schiano's got to go, and maybe some other guys as well. Like Bill Davis has got to go for sure. Those two guys have to go, and then some other guys would be questionable. In the meantime, one thing you could do is, if you remember after the loss to Michigan State, and I want to say it was 2015. 15, yeah. They moved Werner from the field to up in the box. That was their big adjustment, and it worked. They were like lights out versus Michigan versus Notre Dame to close out the year, and they had Werner and Beck up in the box. Schiano is very slow at making adjustments, only does them at the half. Maybe you move him up in the box where he could see the field better and he can adjust faster. It's something to consider. The other would be just say, right now you have a conversation, and because if I'm Grinch, I'm going to, when Schiano's not listening to me and we're giving up 51 to Maryland, I'm going to Urban and being like, look, I'm telling him to do something different. Here's what I'm telling him, and he's not listening. So
I'm sure.
So if I'm Urban, I would be like, look, you're calling the defense. I'd be like, Schiano, sorry, dude. You can help with the game plan, but Grinch is calling the defense. Grinch, ultimately it's his say. You're co-defensive coordinator still, but you're like 1B, where Grinch is 1A and he gets the final decision. So, you provide input, but he makes the decision. So he picks, you provide input on the game plan, he makes the decision. You can provide input on the play calling, but he makes the decision. That's what I would do if I'm Urban. I mean, and it's a big thing to do, but I mean, there's some precedent, at least for like switching guys up in the box. The other thing too is this is their first time being an underdog in a long time. I mean, they've only been underdogs. I want to say, I've got it written down in my notes here. Let me just find it real quick because it's crazy.
Yeah, I heard this too, and I can't remember off the top of my head the last time that Ohio State.
So let's see here,
because I think they were
the last time they were an underdog, Andy, was the national title game versus Oregon in 2015.
Yes. I'd say, yep.
They haven't been an underdog in that time. So there's this thing where, like, if you're favored, you tend to be a little more conservative because you figure you're the better team. Where if you're an underdog, you tend to be more aggressive and take more risks because you're like, I need to do something. I need to take some risks and have them pan out, or I'm going to lose. So this is why, and you see other teams do this all year long, where they're like throwing the kitchen sink at Ohio State because they know, trick plays, all this stuff. They know, they're like, we can't just play a regular game and win. We got to take some risks and have them pan out, or we're not going to win. You know, these like doing fake punts and stuff like that, fake field goals.
Yeah.
You're seeing this, you know, people do it because they're like, we need some of this stuff to work, or we're just not going to beat Ohio State. And even with the cases where it does work out, you know, a lot of them are not still not winning, right? So obviously it's because Ohio State's 10-1, and just about everybody does that to them. But now they're underdogs. Maybe this is where maybe this is where the coordinators get creative, get aggressive, start doing different things, start calling trick plays, you know, maybe we actually see them outcoach the opponent for once, instead of like every freaking week getting outcoached by the opposing team, you know, because they come in and they're like, hey, we're underdogs. We got to get a little crafty here. You know, we're not going to win this just on talent. And, you know, going back to that underdog thing, this is a really cool stat. So Urban has been an underdog 6 times since he's been at Ohio State. His record in those games, he's 6-0.
Yes, 6-0 as the underdog.
As an underdog.
So that's where this whole psychological aspect, when it comes to Urban Meyer, comes into play. You know,
it's the only reason I give Ohio State any chance at all versus Michigan, to be honest, is because Urban. I mean, Urban's 6-0 versus Michigan. He's 6-0 as an underdog. He you know, he's got a phenomenal track record versus his rivals across the board. I mean, even going back to like, you know, the Utah days, right? Like he was undefeated versus Utah State, or undefeated versus Brigham Young, I think is their rival. But yeah, I mean, his record in rivalry games is through the roof, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see. You know, we'll get into that. I guess whenever you're ready to get into that, we'll get into that. We can recap more on Maryland if you want. But
you know, I think the only thing, you know, a win is a win. You know, dude, seriously, man. At this point, a win is a friggin' win. Just win, baby. And you know, I saw a tweet from a local radio sports talk guy, and you know, he said, for people out there who are saying, you know, just win, that's accepting mediocrity, and that's not, you know, what we should expect out of Ohio State. And you know what, dude, you're one of the people out there that, quite frankly, I mean, I know I sit here and I'll get testy about things. I'll get salty, as I've been getting salty as we've been kind of talking about this Maryland game and Greg Schiano and whatnot. I get it. You know, I am a rabid fan who at times can kind of flip out, fly off the handle. But I am also realistic in that at the end of the day, I ultimately realize that, you know, you just have to use your brain sometimes and go, you know what? Unfortunately, this Ohio State team, overrated. You can look at them each week and tell that they're not as good as their record indicates. I mean, you know, they've had a number of close games, obviously, games that they won that they shouldn't have, you know, like this past weekend. But at the end of the day, I sit back and I go, you know what? I'm happy just to see these guys win. If that's accepting mediocrity, then I guess, yeah, I'm just being a mediocre kind of guy, that I'm happy that Ohio State is 10-1, okay? You know, you and I have talked about this, Chris. At the end of the day, you know, people may look back at the game itself and go, wow, man, Maryland overtime 1-point win. You know, I can't believe that, but gosh, yeah, that sounds like it was a pretty crazy game. Yeah, it was 5-5 Maryland, and it was a son of a bitch to see Ohio State struggle to put them down. But that was one hell of a football game, Chris. I mean, it seriously was one hell of a football game. And just being a fan of the sport, that is just as exciting to see a great game being played, even if it is Ohio State against a mediocre team, you know, and I can guarantee a shitload of people out there were like, oh, Maryland, please, crossing their fingers, just waiting to see Ohio State lose. I mean, everybody wants to see Ohio State lose if you're not an Ohio State fan, obviously, right? It's, that's the way it is with all other teams, Ohio State fans want to see Alabama lose, see Clemson lose, Notre Dame, Michigan. But I just, if I'm accepting the fact that they're 10-1 and ranked 10th in the country as being mediocre, then fine. But let's face it, just because you're accepting the fact that Ohio State's 10-1 and kind of hanging on by a thread doesn't mean you're accepting mediocrity. It just means that you're accepting things for the way they are. And sometimes things are the way they are. They're out of your control, and you can either sit there and stew about it and get all pissy, or you can just kind of accept that it is what it is. And hey, things can always improve. You can obviously work on things. And I'm sure that this football team, after this season is done, they're going to go to the drawing board, and these guys who were first-year starters this year, they're going to be coming back next year. They're going to have a season under their belt. They're going to be, more prepared. I mean, I think we're putting a little bit too much pressure on some of these guys. Jeff Okudah, yeah, okay, he's only a sophomore. I mean, he's only, 19, 20 years old, and kind of a part-time starter. Isaiah Pryor, true sophomore, first-year starting. Brendan White, yeah, he's looked better than Isaiah Pryor, but, these are some young kids. Pete Werner, true sophomore, first year starting. And sometimes some kids, you just kind of have to let them get out there and get their butts kicked, in real game time. But they're going to learn from that. They're going to grow from that, and hopefully they're going to get better. So let's hope that this defense, comes back refreshed next year, and we do definitely see a whole different look. Maybe not. And next year, if we keep seeing, to quote you and old Albert there earlier, if we keep seeing the same damn thing from this defense next year, and it's Greg Schiano and it's, Alex Grinch and whomever, and it's the same guys and it's the same coordinators and it's the same thing and it's the same results, then I'm going to start getting very, very frustrated, even more so than I am now. But suffice it to say, Chris, you know what I'm saying? I'm just happy to see that, yeah, this team is 10-1. It hasn't looked pretty this year, but damn it, I'm going to root for my Buckeyes regardless of how bad they're looking, but still winning football games, because at the end of the day, people are going to look back and see that 52-51 overtime score, but ultimately they're going to see a W right next to that score. And Ohio State has 10 of those W's on this schedule and only one L. And that one L was a bad L. It's a big L. That's a big, huge black mark of an L on the schedule so far this year. Don't get me wrong. I get that. But, it is what it is. And so let's just sit back and accept it. You know what I mean? That's my thought process. I don't know about you. I don't know if you're willing to accept the fact that they're 10-1. They're winning football games. May not look pretty, but at least at the end of the day, they've won the football game. I don't know if that's good enough for you or not, but for me, at least right now with this team and what I see and their abilities, I'm happy. I mean, for the most part, I'm happy. With a few grumblings aside, but
So I guess it depends on what it is how we're going to define this, how we're going to frame this discussion. So, I mean, I'm happy with this team. I'm happy with my life. But I've gotten much better at being happy in general, be that with football, be that with my job, be that with my relationships, It used to be when Ohio State would lose a game, it not only ruined my day, it pretty much ruined my week. Now it's it doesn't even ruin my day. It's I can even still enjoy a close game that they lose. I'm oh, you know what? That was a good game, and so am I enjoying this team? Hell yeah, I am enjoying this team. You're right. That was a really great game versus Maryland. That was a hell of a game. That was fun to watch. I'm enjoying watching Haskins light it up. I'm enjoying watching these shootouts. Would I prefer that the defense was playing at an elite level and instead of playing tight games versus Maryland, we're blowing people out? Yeah, sure. That would be my preference, but I accept what the team is because this is what they are at this point. We're 11 games into the season, right? They are who they are. I accept who they are, and I'm enjoying them. I'm having a good time. I'm not gonna like Ohio State football. This isn't my meal ticket. This isn't how I put food on the table, right?
Your existence, exactly. It's not the crux
this is entertainment.
Of you. Exactly.
And if you're not getting joy from your entertainment, then you should probably find something else to. There's plenty of other things out there that you can choose from. We're not lacking in options for entertainment in 2018. So. Yeah, I'm enjoying Ohio State, but the other thing you said is you're like, hey, look, this team is really young. They've got a lot of guys who are going to be back next year, a lot of second-year players. And on one hand, you're right, they got a lot of guys back next year. But on the other hand, we're 11 games into the season. They're really not young anymore. 11 games in. I mean, you look at the 2014 team. Look how many of the stars on that team were second-year players. You got Zeke. You got Joey Bosa. You got Darren Lee. Over and over, you go through that team. I mean, some of their very best players were second-year players. And early in the year, they looked really young. Early in the year, they got beat and looked bad by Virginia Tech. They didn't look all that great versus some other teams they were playing. But by the 11th game of the year, 12th game of the year, I mean, they were like world beaters. They had put it all together. So this team.
Well, do you think that though this team has a Zeke Elliott, a Joey Bosa, a Darren Lee, a Von Bell caliber of player? Because I personally don't. I mean, aside from Nick Bosa, maybe a Draymond Jones, right. Defensively. But right now, I don't see anybody with that kind of caliber on this. At least on the defense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Chase Young is really good, but he's never going to be a Nick Bosa. He's never going to be a Joey Bosa. No. Zeke, there's no Zeke on this team. There isn't. No. Darren Lee. I wonder if Brendan White could be like a Darren Lee if you moved him out there at linebacker and gave him quit moving him around and let him have a full season, a full spring to stay at linebacker and get all the snaps of the first string guy and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Then there's a lot of young linebackers on this team that aren't playing at all. Like, what's his name? Karaja Mitchell or whatever. I don't know. There's all kinds of
Karaja Mitchell.
Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of players we're not even seeing.
Devontae Pope.
And had they have like a competent had they have Luke Fickell coaching them, and maybe there's a Darren Lee. I don't know. I'm not willing at this point to say there's not a Darren Lee, but
at least that we see.
But from what we see,
currently.
There's no Darren Lee for sure.
Right.
So, more alarming, I would say, like the big difference between this team in 2014, even bigger than like not having a Zeke to hand it off to, is the offensive line. The offensive line does not dominate. Like that offensive line was just amazing. So, which I guess, leads into this weekend, a discussion with Michigan. I am going to pick Michigan to win this game, like a lot of people. And I'm actually going to pick them to win convincingly to embarrass Ohio State. I think we might see a curl up into the fetal position kind of win, like they did versus Purdue this year, like they did versus Iowa last year, like they did versus Clemson the year before that. Because I think Michigan dominates the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball in this game. I think we've seen inferior teams dominate the line of scrimmage versus this team. I mean, my God, 99th offense in the country, Maryland, 99th offense in the country, put up 51 on them.
I know, dude. They're going to make – so, all right, so here we go. This is it, folks. This is what we've been waiting all week to do. Let's talk about the Michigan game, Chris. I know you've already kind of started, but is Ohio State's defense going to make Shea Patterson and the trio of running backs they have, and Donovan Peoples-Jones and Tariq Black and whomever else you want to throw in there on the offensive side of the ball for the Rodents, is Ohio State's defense going to make them look like All-Americans? Because I'm afraid, yes, they will.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they've made other quarterbacks that weren't, frankly, nearly as good as Shea Patterson look amazing. They've made these running backs. I mean, look at what McFarland looked like. I mean, they're going to make people look like Heisman candidates, and they're just going to get whipped at the line of scrimmage. This offensive line, it's like a 2014 Ohio State offensive line. Ed Werner, it pains me to see him go to Michigan because, I mean, they're talking like this, that he should get the Broyles Award for how good that offensive line has been. Like, what kind of turnaround? Because it used to be for years, that was like the weakness at Michigan is the offensive line. And it was the same thing. It was the weakness at Ohio State for years. Warner came in and like about overnight turned it around. I mean, he's got these guys just dominating. And, you know, in retrospect, after that, you know, when Warner was ran out of town, you know, when Warner was asked to take a position somewhere else,
Minnesota,
you know, because he's not a good offensive coordinator. Honestly, if I was Urban Meyer and I had a crystal ball and knew this was going to happen, I would have let him stay as offensive coordinator, but got a co-offensive coordinator. I had Ryan Day. I would have sent Beck out of town. Got Ryan Day as a co-offensive coordinator, and then just let Ryan Day call the plays and be like, look, you know, you're still the offensive coordinator, but we need you as the off. You know, you can help with the game plan. You can give input on play calling, but Ryan Day's going to call the play. Or I'd just be like, I'd call the plays and be like, you know, if like his ego couldn't take it and I'm Urban, I'd be like, I'm calling the plays. So it's not that we trust Ryan better than you. It's just, I'm going to call the plays. Then I'd be like, you know, seriously, Ryan, what should I call here? You know, 'cause, like, I just wouldn't want to let him go. Like this team is so much better with a dominating offensive line. You know, I look at what that 2014 team was, and that was the big difference. It wasn't Joey Bosa. It wasn't Zeke Elliott. You know, it wasn't Michael Thomas at wide receiver or Devin Smith. You know, it was that offensive line just went to Alabama and just dominated them. And that's what Michigan has this year. So you know, we've had other offensive lines that weren't playing at that level dominate this defensive line at times this year. And I think it's going to be just, by the end of the game, they're going to be in the freaking fetal position. And it's going to happen on the other side of the ball as well. Because they're, you know, meanwhile, yeah, okay, Ohio State's got one of the best offensive in the country, but you know, there's been this offensive line has not looked great at times, and Dwayne Haskins has, as good as he's been when they're protecting him, has looked very mortal when they're not protecting him, and they're not going to be able to protect him all game long. I think they're going to get pressure, you know, and I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball at all. So they're going to have to pass. And I think when they have to pass, that, you know, Michigan's going to get there a lot. And Haskins is going to turn into an average quarterback. And an average quarterback isn't going to be enough when Michigan's able to run the ball at will. So I think it's ugly. I'm accepting it now that, you know, it's you know, I would never be more happy to be proven wrong, of course, obviously. And I still think there's a chance Ohio State could win because Urban Meyer has never lost to Michigan. Urban Meyer is great versus rivals. Urban Meyer is great when he can have an angry team. He's great when he's an underdog. And this team probably still has a talent edge, even though, you know, it's the coaching, I think, is what's really holding them back. I think they're probably the more talented team. And also, I wonder if Ohio State couldn't get in their heads a little bit. You know, I mean, if they, like, let's say they come out just try to get into a shootout and Ohio State gets ahead, is Michigan going to be like, oh, here we go again, and start doubting themselves and maybe get tight? Maybe like the old khaki pants gets a little tight and you know, I mean,
Jimmy Cax.
Yeah, and starts making mistakes and starts playing conservative or starts, you know, I could just see, there's a lot of things I could see where Ohio State could come out and win this. But that's not what I'm going to predict happening. You know, I won't be surprised if Ohio State comes out with a win, but that's not what I'm going to predict. I'm going to predict a loss, and I'm going to predict a thumping. It's going to be Tim Biakabatuka time. I mean, if McFarland is running for like those kind of yards, you know, Higdon, you know, this is going to be. I'm imagining this as Higdon, when Higdon's talking to his grandkids, he's going to talk back. He's going to tell them about the 2018 time when he went into the horseshoe and you know, ran for 300 yards on, you know, number 10 Ohio State when they hadn't beaten them and, you know, ever in like 7 years or whatever it was. You know, this is going to be one of those kind of games where like this is going to be put up there with the Tim Biakabatuka game.
Well, what's your final score?
Now, I hadn't figured that one out yet. Let's see here. I'm going to say.
Well, I tell you what. Think about it here for a few minutes, because now I'm going to go ahead and throw my 2 cents.
I'll go here. How about this? I'll go 45-17.
Ooh.
I'm tempted to go even higher than that. Like put them in the 50s.
Really?
Because I think they've got a much better offense than Maryland, and I think the ball could just, we could see a snowball effect here where like Ohio State starts coming from behind and they're throwing like multiple pick sixes and, but all right. Yeah, I'll go with that. I like that though. That's
so
45-17.
So even though we talked about Urban and psychology, major,
I think they're better. I mean, UM is better in pretty much every facet of the game except maybe passing the ball.
Well,
maybe
okay,
punting.
So
maybe punting inside the 5-yard line. We got Chrisman, but
we're the best out there when it comes.
But I mean,
to
special
that,
teams have been not been great for Ohio State this year, and many of the faucets. I mean, outside of that punt team. So I think, and I like Michigan special teams. So,
well, here's my thing. All right, number one. You had talked about Ohio State, if they're going to have any chance in this game, they're going to have to throw the football. And when you have one of the best passing offenses in the country, and think, yeah, of course. Just let Dwayne get out there and rip. I mean, this is definitely, this game for me. The last couple of games, it was like Ohio State's offense versus the other team's defense, especially Michigan State. The best rushing defense in the country. Ohio State's rushing offense not that good. So, let's see. I think a lot of people out there, they felt like, okay, this game is going to come down to can Ohio State score points on Michigan State because, Michigan State's offense is not very great. Ohio State's defense wasn't very great, but they kind of equal each other out, so it's going to be Ohio State's offense versus the defense. I thought it was the other way around. I felt that way in that Michigan State game. I thought, no, I want to see, can Ohio State's defense stop Michigan State's very average offense, which they did, and set their offense up, in good positions to score, which they did. And of course, the defense did score a touchdown against Michigan State. However, this game, I think, truly does come down to Ohio State's ability to throw the football against the best defense in the entire country. And not just the best overall total defense, the best passing defense in the country. I mean, Chris, dude, this passing defense Michigan has is just silly. Number one in the country in passing yards allowed at 123 yards a game, dude. Team passing efficiency defense, they're number one in the country at an 88.7.
Ouch.
Scoring defense, they're fourth in the country, only allowing 13 points a game. So this, and their rushing defense is pretty good too. It's not as quote unquote good as their passing defense. But their rushing defense, I'm looking at their rank in the Big Ten. And I mean, they're third in the conference. They only allow 111 yards a game on the ground, Chris. So, I mean, this defense, it is. It's going to come down to Ohio State's ability to score. And are they going to be able to score against such a prolific defense? And I'm with you. At obviously the here's the thing, we do want to kind of dig on the offensive line and how bad they've looked, and this has not looked like a dominant offensive line like we've seen in the past from Ohio State teams, but you look at their ability to, for the most part, keep pressure off of Dwayne. They're fourth in the conference at like 1.5 sacks a game.
Right.
And, they've allowed... And
they pass the ball a lot.
Well,
There's a lot of opportunities for them to get more sacks. Right.
Exactly. So, Ohio State's only allowed 16 sacks this year. And in fact, they are tops in the conference in sack yards allowed with 75. So, this, as you just said it, as often as they've thrown the football, I think they've done a pretty damn good job at protecting Dwayne Haskins. Can they do that, though, against this Michigan defense? Like you said, man, Michigan's defense, they're fast, they're angry, they're hungry, they blitz, they show a bunch of different looks.
Right. Will Winovich play?
And Chase Winovich, is he going to play after, did he break his collarbone? Was it just a deep bruise? What's going on? Apparently he did not break it. At least I think that's what Harbaugh said, that he did not break his collarbone, but it was a deep bruise. But still, is he going to play? I mean, we're talking about your friggin' collarbone, dude. That's pretty much, that's the whole crux of where you're hitting, Well,
if it's broken, he's out for weeks. He's not playing in the playoffs or in the playoffs or whatever bowl game.
So wait, time out. You're saying that it is broken?
No. I'm saying if it's broken, he's out. Unless they're just flat out lying. They're basically saying he's probable. I mean, that could just be gamesmanship.
Oh, I'm sure that's exactly what it is, if anything.
But you
don't want to go. You don't want to tell the other team before the game. Yeah, our best dude is not playing. I mean, unless it's obviously a Nick Bosa type situation, which it's not. But yeah, still the defense is good. I realize Winovich is their Nick Bosa, but. Which he's not quite Nick Bosa level, but he's there.
He's not even. He's not even like Chase Young statistically, or Draymond Jones.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're
Young
right,
and Jones. I mean, as good as Michigan's defense is, you look at the tackles for loss, look at the sacks for Chase Young and Draymond versus Rashawn Gary and Chase Winovich, and it's pretty decidedly in the favor of Ohio State. Take that for whatever it's worth, because clearly I would much rather have Michigan's defense coming in this weekend than Ohio State.
Yeah.
But you're right. Winovich is not just like their best rusher, but he's also like the heart and soul of their defense, right? I mean, that's what he's the leader, and so it'll be a big blow if he doesn't play.
Absolutely. But even if he doesn't, I mean, like I said, there's still a damn good defense without him, but that will be a big blow. Nonetheless, it's if Ohio State can keep the pressure off of Dwayne, if Day and Wilson and Irby can cook up a scheme offensively, they might have to reincorporate the screen pass for this game.
Oh yeah, because
you know what I mean.
Yeah, they're gonna have to do something because Michigan's really aggressive.
Yes,
they've got to do something to counter that, or like it's going to be freaking a long day for Haskins.
Exactly. Don't let Haskins just sit back in the pocket and go long. I mean, which they really haven't. If you look at a lot of the pass plays, it's a lot of like crossing routes, like quick digs, 5-6 yard digs, curl routes, out routes to the sideline, pretty quick passes. Dwayne's not going deep a whole lot. And I know people are like, man, I want to see the deep ball more. I want to see the deep ball. Well, we saw it early in the season. We haven't seen it as much. We did see it against Maryland.
Yeah, I saw it a lot versus Maryland.
That was a nice deep pass to McLaurin, and that was because they knew that they had the speed. Ohio State, I'm sorry, Michigan's defense is going to be able to handle Ohio State's speed. Now, there might be a couple plays here and there where Ohio State's receivers can break out and you might be able to go deep, but don't test this defense in trying to do that because they will make you pay. You keep it short, sweet, simple, screen passes, quick hits, kind of keep running the offense like you've been doing. Don't try and get cute and think, okay, this is the game where we can, start trying to go deep. Because if they do that, I'm going to slam my head on the table frickin' 87 times in a row.
Well, I think they do need to take a few deep shots to keep the defense honest.
And I'm not saying don't go
don't
deep
drop
at
back
all,
and do that every play.
Right.
I mean, they're not going to have the time to do that. They're going to have these like get the ball out in 2 seconds kind of plays. They're going to, because otherwise, Haskins is going to end up on his back way more than we're going to like. So, do not try and get cute throwing the football, and you are going to have to run. And we saw actually Indiana. I mean, their running back had over 100 yards against them last weekend. So here's the thing, Andy. Though everybody's like, look at Indiana, they're vulnerable. Look how they played versus Indiana, and I'm like.
Look how Ohio State's played against Indiana, Minnesota, Nebraska, Maryland. I mean,
come on now. I mean, we get on like Michigan was probably just overlooking Indiana. If there's ever a time to overlook Indiana, if you're Michigan looking at your schedule and you got Ohio State looming a week later,
it's the week before. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I gotta think they were just overlooking Indiana, and who could blame them? You know, I mean that's.
Well, I mean, for Pete's sakes, was Ohio State maybe overlooking Maryland? You know, what I'm saying?
Right. So here's an interesting thing. Let's talk about. Because you said let's look at the common opponents. I've got this somewhere in my notes here where we've got common opponents because they have 6 common opponents.
Well, of course, yeah, the whole East division.
Right. So all right. So both teams went 6-0 versus their common opponents: Penn State, Michigan State, Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana, and Nebraska. So OSU's scoring margin was better against Rutgers, Indiana, and Michigan State, you know, where Ohio State beat Indiana by 21, where Michigan only beat them by 11. But Michigan's scoring margin was better against Penn State, Nebraska, and Maryland. So in their 6 common opponents, 3 of them Ohio State did better, and 3
they
of them
went
Michigan
3-3. Yeah, they went 3-3 basically.
So it's as much as people are like this. You know, Michigan is clearly the better team. And I'm calling for like the smackdown. I'm calling for Tim Biakabatuka to be out there running all over the field. There's some reason to think that they could hang in there and play. And the spread, they are underdogs, but it's not like they're like 17-point underdogs. They're like 4.5-point underdogs.
Is it 4.5 now? Because they came out at 3.5.
It went to 4.5. It's been moving around. So when I checked, which was admittedly like 2 days ago, it was 4.5. So it might have moved since then. Okay. But nobody's, like I said, I won't be shocked if Ohio State pulls out a win. I think it's well within the realm of possibility.
Absolutely not.
So we'll see. I mean, certainly, especially in this series, the better team hasn't always won the game. I think Michigan clearly has the better team right now, but that doesn't mean the better team always wins.
Oh, God, how many times do we see a mediocre Michigan team upset an undefeated, second-ranked Ohio State team? Now, granted, that was before the Jimmy T days and the current Urban days. That was the old John Cooper days. Right. Things are a lot different now, and obviously we've seen Ohio State be really the team that was pulling out an upset, if you will. And think about this, though, Chris. Going back to Tressel, how many times can you remember Ohio State not being the favorite in this game? Like, I can think of 0-1 when we were up there, and I think they had like 1 loss or 2, and Ohio State was like 6-4 or something. Yeah.
They were favored in 2011, believe it or not. So that was the
Michigan.
That was the Luke
Fickell, right? Yeah.
But they were also favored in 2004.
11. Yeah. I was just getting ready to say 04. Other than that, I think Ohio State's pretty much been favored in this game every other year.
Yeah.
So it's not like there have been a lot of times where Ohio State could play the spoiler.
Right.
And in all those years we just talked about, well, not all of them, I'm sorry, 01 and 04, they did pull off the upset. 2011, they did not. But there was a couple other games too that where Michigan was ranked and we were ranked, but Ohio State was still the favorite. It's just coming down to this game, dude. If Ohio State, I will not be shocked at all. Yeah, if Ohio State wins. I mean, let's face it, dude. It's Urban Meyer. This is a good Ohio State football team. It's not the greatest. They're the best we've ever seen, obviously. And the type of talent. I mean, there is at least on paper talent for this football team, and they have gotten 10th ranked and a 10-1 record. They've gotten you to that point. All right, they're at least that good to get you to this point, right?
Right.
But yeah, this just feels like, once again, Michigan's sitting on that raft. They're just chilling on top of the water with a ice cold beer in their hand, right, man, and they got it made right now. And Ohio State's kind of they're treading water, man, to just try and keep their head above. I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State wins. I don't think it's going to happen either, though. I'm with you, but I'm going to say this. I think Ohio State at least has enough respect for themselves. Urban.
It's at home, too.
Not going to let
It's at home too. So like Purdue was on the road. Iowa last year was on the road. Clemson was not in the horseshoe. Neutral site. So like
correct.
So that makes a difference.
Correct. I think it does too. And that's why I honestly don't think that Ohio State is going to get thumped. I really don't. But I do think it's almost going to kind of look like 2016, if you remember that game, Chris. Michigan pretty much dominated. Michigan pretty much dominated that game.
Right.
I think it was early second quarter, Malik Hooker, pick six, gets the first score of the game. And then after that, for basically, almost 3 entire quarters, I'd say about 2.5 quarters, and then obviously the double overtime. But for at least the entire second quarter, third quarter, and half of the fourth, that was Michigan's football game. They were up 17-7. Ohio State could not do jack offensively. And Michigan, once again, one of the best defenses in the country. And you could tell in that game, how good their defense was and why they were so highly ranked, because Ohio State could not do anything throughout most of that game offensively. I think that's what's going to happen here this coming Saturday. I think that Michigan's defense is going to pretty much work Ohio State's offense, wear them down. And unless we see some ingenuity, which I think we can see, at least we've seen adjustments and ingenuity being made, Chris, on the offensive side of the ball. And if Day and Wilson and Irby, like I said, can cook up a good game plan, I think they're going to keep it close. But ultimately, I think Michigan's just going to be a little bit better than Ohio State. Their defense is going to do just enough to kind of keep Ohio State's offense at bay. And I don't think that it gets any more. I'm all week, honestly, I've been saying no more than a touchdown. I'm kind of seeing like 11 points right now, but kind of like almost what we did to them last year. You remember that game? That game was, Michigan was up 2 touchdowns last year, and then Ohio State scored 2 touchdowns to end the first half, and it was a 14-14 game, and then it was kind of back and forth a little bit, and then, Ohio State pulls away at the end and wins by 11. I could see it being like where Michigan kind of jumps out early, and then just, Ohio State kind of scraps and claws a little bit to make it look close. But ultimately, Michigan is able to kind of hold them off and, like a 24-17 game, or maybe even, like a 31-21 or something like that, Mm-hmm. I could just see Ohio State having enough respect, like you said, because it's at home. This team, they're not gonna lay down quietly. they're gonna fight. But I just think Michigan's got a little bit too much in the gas tank for the Buckeyes, and this is unfortunately, Jimmy Cax's year. And, just the law of averages too, Chris. Urban is 6-0.
Right.
And at some point, dude, Ohio State has lost 2 times in the last 17 years. Twice, Chris.
Right.
This is unheralded. At some point, the pendulum's going to swing back the other way. And, everything just this whole season, dude, doesn't it just have that just weird, creepy feeling? Everything with the defense and Greg Schiano and Urban and the suspension and the health issues, all of this stuff. It just almost seems like it's going to kind of come to a culmination here this coming Saturday, and it's going to kind of this is going to be the game, honestly, that kind of swings that pendulum back towards Michigan. And I think this, unfortunately, is going to be the start of it. But, we'll see. We'll see, right? I hope I'm wrong, like you. I love it when I'm wrong, and that's when I predict Ohio State to lose, especially when it comes to the game. And they prove me wrong. I hope they prove me wrong friggin' all day long. I'll dude, if they win this football game, I'll take off all my friggin' clothes and I'll go dance naked on the friggin' 50-yard line in the middle of the block. I'll do it, dude. I will do it right now. Buckeye Leafcast, Andy Evans, guarantee I'm getting naked and I'm dancing on the friggin' O. Let me tell you what, if they win this football game, the place is going to go berserk.
Oh my God, dude.
Storming.
Sea of red on the field.
Yep. Yep. I'm getting chills just thinking about it right now, brother. God, I hope we're wrong. I really hope we're freaking wrong.
I know. That would be spectacular for sure.
Oh, man. Well, all right, brother. Hey, anything else before we jump off the microphones we should let the kind listeners know?
Well, just as my usual weekly notice that I do have another podcast. It's a personal development podcast called Choice Conversations. You can find me at choiceconversations.com or anywhere where you would find podcasts. Choice Conversations. Check it out.
Absolutely brilliant, sir. This Buckeye Leafcast has also been brought to you by Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC. It's not clean until it's Christie Clean. Be sure to visit our Facebook page at Christie's Cleaning Services, LLC, and also brought to you by Columbus Wired for your fill of Central Ohio sports and beyond. Be sure to check us out at columbuswired.net. So you've got it. You're going with it, 45-17?
Yep.
You're sticking with it? All right, there you go, folks. The Intergalactic Buckeye fan has predicted a big OSU loss in the Horseshoe this Saturday, 45-17.
Embarrassing.
I'm going to say embarrassing, curl up in the fetal position, as you said, loss for the Buckeyes. Man, God, I hope you're wrong.
Oh my God,
I hope
no.
I'm wrong too. I'm keeping it closer, a little closer than that. Like I said, I all week I've been saying a 7-point loss. 31-21 just kind of sprung into my head, but I'm going to go ahead and say like 31-24 final score, Michigan. But at any rate, hey. We've gotten this far, brother. We've gotten this far. We got one more to go. At least one more to go, baby.
Right.
One more to go.
Yep.
So on that note, you know what we got to do. We got to leave them like we always do. Oh, wait.
I-O.
Go Bucks!